Hello, everyone, and welcome to kind of episode 1.
Yes.
It's the intro episode of the podcast. There'll be some people who know us from online and from the radio show that I do.
Your radio show.
Yeah, well, you feature quite heavily on it, stories about you.
Yes.
We just thought we'd explain who we are, what we're about, and what this podcast will be about, which is pretty much family and relationships.
Yeah, I think the title sort of alludes to what it is, which is, we're grandparents.
I'm 37.
And I was 40 at the time when I became a grandparent. It's just the story of us, really. Well, I don't know if this will be the story of us or this will just be stories that we...
It'll be one part of the story.
Yeah.
I think people look at us, and this is why I wanted to do this episode. They look at us and you can see in their eyes when we say that we've been together for 20 years this year. We've been married for 13. And when we say we have a 7-month-old granddaughter, you can see their brain ticking like, can I ask how that happened?
Yeah, I think, do you brace? Like I find myself bracing when people, like you meet someone for the first time and they're like, oh, do you have any kids? And we're like, yeah, we have 3 kids. And then if the conversation moves on and then they come back and they go, how old are your kids? I always have to brace myself.
Do you work from the bottom up?
I do. I always go from the bottom up because I'm like, and sometimes I'll just fluff over the fact that I have a 23-year-old.
So we have a daughter who's 8, a son who's 11, and then a son who is 23.
But only because that just opens up a whole new conversation. So if you're just making small talk, it's a big explanation to get to, and I think that's why we probably need to do this episode because it's not a small story really. We've been together for 20 years now.
Yeah,
we met in October 2005 at a 18th birthday party in a backyard, and
And I think the other thing is when people do the maths and I say I'm 37 and you're 41, I was looking like, what are we saying? Then they work back on a 23-year-old and they go, the math ain't mathin'.
I guess if you start at the beginning, we met through a mutual friend, someone you were working with, and I think it's safe to say that sparks were very evident immediately between the both of us.
Yeah.
Even though I thought I was a little bit wise and mature at 22, and that I was pretty sure it wasn't going to go anywhere, but I just really enjoyed your company, and you were really nice to me, and we laughed a lot.
I was 18 when we first got together. You were 22. You already had a 3-year-old son.
Correct.
And would you say, I'd say the first sort of 3 to 6 months of our relationship was fantastic. And then we sort of started to hit a bit of a rough patch.
Yeah, because I think that's when sort of reality sets in, right? So in the beginning it is all like
sex.
Yeah, gross. But I think once reality sets in and there's bills and responsibilities, and there was a lot of outside influence of people being like, why are you guys even bothering? He's 18, you're 22, you're a single mum, you're, moving somewhere and trying to build your career. He's trying to build his career. It's just people thought it was a bad idea.
I'm glad I look back on that time because we broke up and got together a million times. I mean, we got together, 3 months later we moved in together.
Yes.
3 months later we moved out from each other.
Yes.
And that's when people sort of started to work against us in our relationship.
Yeah.
But I feel like we worked through a lot of things at that point, and it was hard because I was so young. Well, we were both so young.
Yeah.
And people had their opinions about whether or not we should be in such a serious relationship.
Yeah.
And I found that really difficult because I think when you're 18, 19, 20, for some reason, probably even, till you're older, you take on the influence of other people way more than you should. And I found it really weird that I'd found you and, Ethan, this little boy who I was in love with, but everyone around me was telling me it was such a bad thing.
Yeah, I guess if we put ourselves in our parents' shoes at the time,
Yeah.
how like it's not always it's hard. It's hard when your kids, you still think of them as kids at 18. They are still kids at 18.
Well, our eldest son is now 23 with his own baby, and I still think of him as a kid too.
Well, I call him and his wife the teenagers.
We
Like
do.
they're not teenagers, but I find it very hard to reconcile
Yeah.
in my mind that he's a man, because I still think of him as my little like 10-year-old Eefy Beefy running around the house in his undies with a beanie on and a pair of Spider-Man gloves. But but that is not what he always wears now.
No.
Sometimes he wears different outfits.
But he did wear that outfit up to about 12.
But no,
Are you talking in reference to a photo we have of him when he was meant to be cleaning out his bedroom,
Yes,
but we found him
yes,
during that, yeah.
but no, like I think it is hard to reconcile, and I guess I didn't realize that at the time, because at 22 I felt, like I said, very mature. I'd been a parent for 3 years. I'd obviously had to grow up a lot, you know, and take on a lot of responsibility, and I was in a different place than what a lot of my friends were in that way, that my life wasn't about me.
Sorry, if you
Get it
can
up,
hear that,
girl.
that is our dog.
You're right there, Tom.
Better not vomit. Yeah.
So yeah, I think you were 18. So I think people still feel like they can give you a lot of advice when you're 18. They still feel like you're ripe to be, I don't know. I
Told what to do.
was going to say groomed, but that's
No, I know what you meant.
yeah, like, so I guess that's why, but it definitely made it really, really hard for us in the beginning. We came up against so much, pushback on us even being together, which I think most people probably don't have that.
No.
But
See, it was also hard. I had never felt about someone the way that I felt about you. You know, I'd had girlfriends in high school, but they don't really count. No, you know what I'm saying. If your mum and dad are picking you up and dropping you off to a premises, you're probably not having a serious relationship at that
I don't
point.
know.
But, meeting you was super intense for me, and I think I fell in love with you as soon as I met you, and that was really hard for me to kind of comprehend. But then when we would go through rough patches and we would break up, it was very different as well, because I had fallen in love with Ethan, this little boy that came into my life, and then it was like a double breakup every time. And I think on our 15th breakup, you
No idea.
told me that we were done, and you did cut me off, and it was probably 3 or 4 months of me,
Probably.
I think, trying to win you back. Lots of groveling, stacks of groveling.
You've always been good with words, though. Look at you go, it worked.
Who can
Wasn't all
resist?
you had going for you. No, like I think I was just at the point where, because it took me a while for me to introduce you to Ethan in the
Yeah.
beginning of our relationship, because it's not something you take lightly when you have a small child. And I obviously thought it was a fling, so it took us a while to introduce the two of you, and then you hit it off like a house on fire, and it was a very, very cute bond that you shared immediately.
Yeah.
So I think that did add another element to our breakups, because we both wanted the best thing for him, but and that's kind of why in the end I was like, well, we can't just keep going through this over and over again.
Yeah.
But yeah, since then we've been solid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what are we together, 20 years?
20 years this
The end
year.
of this year?
Yeah.
We've been married 13 years, just gone. And obviously the best decision of my life. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, of course. Like I couldn't be happier with the way that it's all worked out. And looking back, I don't regret any of that. I don't regret
No.
how hard it was for us. I don't regret the lessons that we learnt during that time about each other and about relationships and life, and how hard you got to work, because we worked really hard early on, and I think we're still reaping the benefits of that. Like obviously we still fight and stuff, but
It's usually your fault.
yeah.
I felt privileged to, Ethan accepted me as his dad. And you know, it was funny when I was younger because if I went into a bottle shop with him around those teenage years, I remember one instance when I was buying wine. We were going to our friends for a barbecue and I was buying wine and the guy goes to me, "Are you buying this for your friend?" And
and he's standing behind you with his Woolies bags, like,
and it was Ethan. And I think Ethan was like,
he was such a big kid too,
massive.
like really tall. He hit 6 foot pretty early.
I think he was like 13 or 14, and he goes, "That's my dad." And the guy at the BWS is like, "As if it is." And I had to say to the guy, I was like,
you got carded until like last year. Let's be honest.
and I said to the guy, "What kind of 14-year-old wants 2 bottles of red wine?"
Exactly.
And because you go to a friend's house, you buy a bit more expensive. But I was like, if it was Woodstock and bourbon or something, then of course. And he's like, "Yeah, okay, fair enough."
Cruises, yeah.
But everyone has always thought we were brothers.
Yeah, they did when you were younger, yeah. Because you've always had a baby face. You have.
That's why I grew the beard.
Yeah. You've always looked really young for your age, and you still do get carded, which is just rude. What I will say about us becoming grandparents early, I think I was shocked about that because I always thought that your kids try and do the opposite of, you know, of what you've done. So, you know, like I thought Ethan would want to travel. He talked about it a lot, wanting to travel and everything like that. But, you know, he got struck by lightning too and fell in love and wanted to be a dad. He'd always wanted to be a dad. We knew that.
He's a great dad. He's a really good dad.
But yeah, he was young. And I think I was in shock. Even though that they'd gotten married, I thought maybe they'd take some more time. I mean, it's the best thing ever. I
so good.
Cannot explain how different it is to being a parent. I guess like they all say, "Oh, well, you can give them back." And that is true. But we actually want her all the time.
Yeah, we're begging them to let us babysit.
Yeah, because she's just, I don't know, it's so different. It's a different type of love to what you have for your kids. Because all that responsibility is on you for your kids. Whereas
I think that's what it is. You don't have any responsibility per se. You do a little bit, but mainly you're just the good time.
Well, I think changing nappies and making bottles and like buying outfits, it's such a privilege, but it's not if you have to do it. You have to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like if it's your 10th dirty nappy for the day, you're not like, "Oh, I've got to change your little bum." Do you know
your first kid, right? Where you get all the fancy stuff, you buy all the bloody things that
open and
disinfectant and everything, and then by the time you get to your 3rd kid, you're like, "Oh well, you can just have whatever."
Ate that off the floor, that's fine.
Whatever the first baby's got left over, we'll use that on you, and if you need other stuff, we'll work it out when we get to it.
Yeah.
And I think it's you go back to that almost first baby step.
Yeah.
Where you want to buy all the cool stuff because we haven't had any baby stuff in our house for so long.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to because she's only 7 months. I'm really looking forward to when she's at school going to Grandparents' Day. I am so excited about that.
You're excited because you'll look so young. That's
in 5 years' time, I'll be 43.
Do you know what's going to be really depressing for you is if you walk in there and no one bats an eyelid at you.
Yeah, and they'll be like, "You look like an old bastard."
Yes. If we rock in and it's like just people our age.
They're like, "God, time hasn't been kind to you, has it?"
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm telling you. Don't be too cocky, bro. Just because we are at the younger end doesn't mean because I do also think there's a lot of young people now who are starting families early, which really surprises me. Like, they're not drinking, they're all sober. They want to start families and buy houses.
I think it goes around, doesn't it? Like, one generation, our parents had kids young. Most of our generation went a bit older. Yeah. Maybe they're going younger again.
Well, I did both. I had kids when I had my first child when I was 18, and then I had my last child when I was 34. So my sister loves to remind me that I was the youngest mum in the family and the oldest. Because, you're right on the cusp of geriatric mum there. But so
that is so awful, actually. I remember that at the
Oh, yeah, when we'd go for appointments when I was pregnant with Edie, and they're like, "How old are you?" And I'd say 34, and they're like, "Are you going to turn 35 before you have the baby?" And I'd be like, "No, like 5 months later, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I don't need to read this huge other list of disclaimers for if you were 4 months younger.
But that's it. Like
older.
Someone in marketing at obstetrics needs to say that a geriatric pregnancy is not good. No one wants to hear that. Like, just say, like, how else could you rebrand that? You could be
old bitch.
Oh, yeah. You can't say later in life pregnancy. Post 35
do you know
pregnancy.
what? I don't like. You're still very young at 35.
Gotcha. Geriatric pregnancy, though.
Yeah, it's awful. Awful. But I don't know how maybe that's a job for you.
Like, no one says it. You know what? They don't turn to the man and go, well, you had a geriatric ejaculation.
Oh, it's so bad to picture. But you are currently, you're not currently doing it, but you'd be geriatric ejaculating all over the place at the moment. Like, you know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you mean.
You're
yes, I'm 37.
Over 35.
Yeah. Is that your way of trying to say I'm getting older?
Well, yeah, you're sucked in.
So now we've got 2 other kids. So we've got an 8-year-old, an 11-year-old. Edie is 8. Our son Xander is 11. So it's pretty wild here.
Yeah.
That's essentially what this podcast is going to be about. We just want to share our stories about being grandparents so young, our family, our lives. And we'd love everyone to get involved too. If you do follow our Facebook group or also the Instagram, Underage Grandparents, we'd love to get your discussions in there, answer any of your questions and do all that kind of stuff. So if you have a question for us, please hit us up. Yeah. We hope you enjoy it. There will be an episode every Thursday as well that we're going to upload. So if you want to get involved with that and any topics you want to hear, we'll do it. So hopefully this is a success. If not, just another podcast out into the atmosphere.